that.
Alright guys, welcome back to Everyday Spartan, and today we're going to break down our 5 obstacles that you should prepare for the most when you're going into your first Spartan race. So if you guys aren't familiar, just as some background, I'm Daniel, and I'm a pretty experienced racer at this point. I qualified for the World Championships in my age group this year, ran at Tahoe, got 28, so I feel pretty good about that. And then this is Mike, who has qualified for...
I've qualified 2 times elite for the Spartan World Championship, and a couple weeks ago, I qualified for the Spartan Ultra World Championship in Sweden.
But yeah, we're both pretty experienced. Between us, we've seen pretty much every Spartan race type they have, except for the hurricane heats. And we just decided it might be a good idea to break down. So you just signed up for your first Spartan race, and you have it kind of on the horizon, and you're not actually sure what to train for. We decided to get our top obstacles, and the criteria we chose for which obstacles are on the top are the ones that are most likely to make you fail at a race. So this kind of has 2 components. Obviously, obstacles that show up a lot are more likely to make you fail just because they're there. See, I think every obstacle on this list shows up at every single Spartan race. And then also just their difficulty and how much you actually need to prepare to get into them. So without further ado, let's go into our obstacles. So sitting in at number 5, we have the Atlas carry. So we kind of wanted to put all carries on this list, but aside from the Atlas carry, of every other carry, sandbag carry, bucket carry,
log
carry, these are all mandatory obstacles that you are not allowed to fail. The Atlas carry is the only one that you can fail, and we see people fail quite a lot. So what this entails is you grab a concrete boulder. From what we can find, the number seems to be around 100 pounds that you have to carry down to some flags, carry it back, and drop down.
Picking it up off the ground is definitely the hardest part. It puts a large strain on your lower back when you do so. So if you want to prepare for this obstacle, definitely want to do some deadlifts, or pick some sandbags up off the ground, or if you've got a cheap bucket filled with rocks from Home Depot, which I would recommend getting just for general training, that works too.
But yeah, so the biggest thing to keep in mind is that this is heavy. You do need to make sure you're not lifting with your back, but lifting with your legs. And just go in there and do a lot of those exercises Mike just mentioned. And you should be right as rain. The next obstacle, number 4, coming in, is the Hercules Hoist, and this is the only other obstacle on the list that is strength-based, in that it's basically you having to move big, heavy weights. So the Hercules Hoist is basically they have close to 100-pound sandbags loaded at the bottom of a pulley, and then they have a rope that goes over the pulley, comes back down, and you have to pull the sandbag all the way up to the top.
And lower it down.
Depending on your body weight, this may sound very easy or very hard. Obviously, some of the lighter dudes...
Yeah, but between the 2 of us, I tend to have a little bit more difficulty with it. However, there's a fence right there, and the proper technique for the lighter people is to put 1 foot up and pull yourself all the way to the ground, and then stand up and do it again. We'll release a technique video showing you this. It sounds complicated, but it's not as difficult as you think, but it makes a huge difference.
Some of the other things that make the Hercules difficult can be your weather conditions. So obviously, if there's water on the course and it rained recently, these tend to soak into the bags and make them extra heavy. And also rain, and particularly mud, people, after they've grabbed the rope several times, tend to make the rope super slick and hard to grab, so your grip strength starts being really tried by the time you start doing the Hercules in some of the later heats. So preparing for this, make sure that your grip strength is on point. You definitely want to be able to grab things by a rope and pull, particularly practicing levering things down. So typically the technique is to lay down on the ground and use the safety guardrail that they have to pull the rope back as efficiently as possible. There have been some races where I've been able to stand up and just drag it down. But yeah, so for reference, Mike has a younger brother who ran his first race with us in Nashville. And how much do you think he weighs?
He might be 115. He's a freshman in high school, another runner, so he doesn't have that much muscle on him.
But he failed both the Atlas carry and the Hercules Hoist. And those are some of the only obstacles he failed the whole race, but pretty much everything he failed was these heavy strength-based obstacles. So definitely, particularly on the lighter side, or just generally haven't been working out or doing a lot of strength stuff, then it's a good idea to work on that. Hercules particularly wants to use upper back, so doing things like rows and stuff like that are going to be very helpful.
Number 3, we have the rope climb. It's exactly what it sounds like. It is a rope that's strung out to maybe 15 feet tall. You walk up to it, grab it with your hands and feet, and you shimmy up to the top, hit the bell, and then climb on down. So one of the reasons that people tend to fail this obstacle is because they try to use too much muscle. So just trying to grab it with their arms and then like holding the rope between their feet and pulling up. You can do that if you're strong enough, but it's vastly inefficient compared to the method of hooking the rope on your feet.
So I think we both vaguely agree that if you have the strength to do a couple of pull-ups, you definitely have the strength to do a rope climb. So at that point, it's all technique. If you are someone who's super strong like me, I think I did every rope climb legless up until West Virginia this year. So basically, I never used my legs when climbing a rope. But the technique definitely makes it a lot easier. For reference, when I went to Atlanta, I got to the rope climb. I saw basically 6 people crowded around a rope, and I just heard people yelling like, "What do we do? Like, how do we climb this thing?" So it's not a technique that's always obvious, and we definitely recommend you going somewhere that has a rope. CrossFit gyms tend to have these kind of ropes, or maybe even a YMCA, and getting some time on the rope.
Or at the very least, when I was learning it for my first one, I bought just a piece of rope from, again, Home Depot. You can buy them by the foot. I bought about this much and then just learned how to do the hooking techniques with my feet. And that seemed to work out pretty well.
Yeah, it definitely saves you a lot of hassle. So rope climb is definitely one of the things that it can either be nearly impossible for you or very easy without a lot of actual physical training. You just have to put a little bit of time into learning the technique. All right, so moving in, we're getting close to the end of the list. Number 2, we're putting multi-rig, and we wanted to put several different obstacles here. Pretty much all of the overhead obstacles or climbing obstacles. So these include multi-rig, monkey bars, twister, and then beater. So basically all of these obstacles where your feet are coming off the ground and you're having to climb just on your hands. This is difficult for several reasons. The main reason we chose multi-rig is because it appears twister and beater are super / beast only obstacles, so you probably won't see those in sprints. And monkey bars tends to be easier than multi-rig. So multi-rig is the really challenging one. You have to have the strength in order to be able to dead hang for that long. And typically you want to be able to do several pull-ups because you don't want to be fully extended on the rope and unable to pull yourself up to grab something if something goes wrong. So you have to be able to do quite a few pull-ups, and I recommend being able to dead hang for about a minute. And also there is a good bit of technique that goes into these obstacles. Less so for monkey bars, but for pretty much all the other obstacles, how you carry your momentum matters a lot. So in the videos you're probably seeing right now of past multi-rigs I've done, you'll see that a lot of what I do is instead of immediately letting go of a ring and trying to grab the next ring on multi-rig, for example, I will swing backwards. That way I generate a bunch of momentum so I can swing forward and grab the next ring nice and easy. Yeah, so there's a couple different techniques that we're not going to go into right here, but pretty much all of them revolve around keeping your momentum and keeping yourself swinging. If you let go too early and you come to a dead start, you have to swing your feet and generate all that momentum again before you start going. So
I have never seen someone stop and successfully get themselves swinging again to complete the obstacle. I've only ever seen them fall.
It is pretty much the main correlate to your success is keeping your momentum going and just being able to hang on that long. So the big things to train here are obviously grip strength, being able to hold on to metal bars, a lot of the time wet or slick with mud, is really important. And being able to do pull-ups while fatigued and stuff like that and hang is pretty much the main strength training you need. So pull-ups are a big portion of what will help you succeed on those obstacles.
And they train your grip strength too, which is really nice.
Yeah. So keep an eye out for that. Before we go on to our number 1 obstacle, we had 2 honorable mentions that did not quite make the list for some reason, like they didn't make the criteria. The first one is the one that I wanted to put on the list, which is the tire flip. The tire flip shows up at a couple races. They've only shown up at 4 of my races I've done this year, and I've done over 20 probably this year. So it is not a very common obstacle, and it's definitely, I've only ever seen it at one sprint course, which is the Asheville, but they can show up there. And the big thing about these tires is it's not the same as just flipping a tire in the gym. These tires are typically, from what we can see, around 400 pounds to 450 pounds. Those are the numbers we see online. But instead, it's not the same as flipping a 400 to 450 pound tire. I've flipped 600 pound tires one-armed at the CrossFit gym before. It's definitely not a matter of strength. It's a matter of the conditions around the tire as well. If it's wet and particularly slick with mud, you're going to have a really hard time gripping this tire and leveraging it over, because the tire is going to slip back as you try lifting it up, making it a lot harder for you to get the tire and do a proper flip with it. So things like that can hurt you a lot. Also, you're usually running and you're under fatigue. So the tire is a big one. Again, the workouts you do for this are very similar to Atlas. You're going to do a bunch of deadlifts. I do a lot of power cleans for it in Mike Williamson's kettlebell routines. That seems to work pretty well for him, because he does a lot better at the tire than I do.
So I will say that just gripping the tire is usually a challenge. When it gets really wet, or like at Asheville, they ran us straight through the dunk wall right before the tire in both races. Yeah. So you can never really get the perfect grip on the tire. A tip for the tire is, if your hands are wet or if the tread is wet, rub your hands on the ground. Or in Killington, I actually picked up gravel off the ground and rubbed it on the treads to get some grit on it so that I could actually grip it. So don't be afraid to use the environment to your advantage. It can be a boon as well as a debuff.
But as a note, I've only failed 3 obstacles this year, and the tire I failed twice. So it's a pretty rough one, even for athletes that are here. And the next one is an obstacle Mike wanted to add to the list. But
so it's not per se an obstacle, but you are going to be out there running, and especially running over like large hilly or even mountainous terrain for a long period of time. And if you don't train for that, it's going to get you very tired, and it'll fatigue your muscles. And then when you get to an obstacle like the tire flip, or you just huffed up a mountain and they want you to immediately roll into the monkey bars, you're more likely to fail that obstacle just because you've already been pretty fatigued. So a really good way to ensure that you don't get just massacred by all the obstacles because you're so tired from the running is to train for the terrain. And the best way to do that is to look up the maps of the venues you're going to, learn how hilly they are, and then teach yourself to run the hills, and then maybe incorporate running and then lifting immediately afterwards into your strength routine.
Yeah, and this can also vary widely. For example, the Charlotte race that we go to tends to be the muddiest race of all, and running in mud is a lot more difficult than running on like nice dry ground.
And flipping the tire is pretty much impossible.
Yeah, or sometimes you might go to a literal mountain and the whole race is just hiking up a mountain and hiking back down. So you have to be ready for that volume. So it's definitely something you should prepare for, but it's not technically an obstacle, so it didn't make the official list. But yeah, with the honorable mentions out of the way, we can get into our number 1 obstacle. Which,
no surprise.
Yeah, no surprise, is the spear throw. The spear throw is exactly what it sounds if you've never been to a Spartan race. They have targets, little men targets.
Big hay bale bodies that you throw the spear into.
And you have to take a spear, you get exactly 1 shot to throw it and have it stick in the target. The technical criteria for beating the obstacle is the spear cannot be touching the ground when you leave the area. So the thing that makes spears a lot more difficult to work with,
it tends to not stay flat and straight like a ball does. If you throw it wrong with too much wrist or too little wrist, the spear can go up, it can go wide, it can just like flop straight up. We've seen all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so it also can just turn in the air after you throw it, which means it's not going to stick. And also, I've definitely seen people where they throw it, it's straight, it hits in the dead center of the target, and they just didn't throw it hard enough, and it just flops to the ground. So you have to get a lot of elements right, and if you've never done something like, if you were that one weird kid who threw javelin in high school, then you might have a slight advantage on everyone else. But for the most part, it's not an object that you've probably used a lot in everyday life. So this is one of the ones where it's not physically demanding at all, and so it's the easiest one to skip burpees on, because it just comes down to you have so much time to get ready, get calmed down, and throw it in. It's a shame to miss it.
It's also remarkably easy to practice. And for some of the other obstacles, like we don't all have access to, monkey bars in our backyard, or we don't have enough room to string up a rope to practice the rope climb, but you can go buy a length of PVC or a broom handle and then go and throw it at something. Like there's a couple of trees that are just pockmarked with spear impacts from where we'll do a run and just throw spears at.
But it's super easy to train. You can throw with PVC pipes. Mike and I decided that we don't like these that much.
They're a bit light compared to the spears.
And we usually train with rake handles, which you can buy I buy them at Lowe's for $10 a pop, and they are solid for spear training. You get one, and you go out and you find a good tree to throw at, and you will be set for your next race. You'll get your accuracy way high. But it's also one of the obstacles that no matter how good you are, there's always a small chance you fail. So that's our top 5 Spartan obstacles with 2 honorable mentions for the list. Personally, if I were someone who's coming in and I was curious about what to train, I would just look at those, and if you can do these obstacles, you can do all of the other obstacles that they're going to throw at you at the course. I wouldn't be too concerned. You may want to be slightly interested in looking at some of the beast or super obstacles that can show up later on if you want to get a little more in depth, but even then, this is a really good starting point. And as a note, we so conveniently happen to be coming out with training videos.
What?
For the
we are? I had no idea.
For these exact obstacles. So the next 5 videos I'm going to make are all going to be videos about these obstacles in particular. So you can feel free to search around the channel and look to see if we have any of the training stuff and more specific detail about how to prepare.
I mean, none of these obstacles are incredibly difficult. They just require that you either move something through space or move yourself through space in ways that you don't normally do. So a little bit of practice now can pay tremendous benefits of not doing burpees later in the race.
Yeah, so thank you guys for watching, and I guess we'll see you in another video.
I'm the star of the show. Everybody knows that.